Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day, your one and only spot for all things NFL draft, NFL talk, and college football. Nick Durst here, Michael Rochman, myself, and we're going to be talking about the Super Wild Card Weekend. We have one more game left of it, but some great games that happened, some not so great games, but we're going to be evaluating the team's futures, the team's coaching security. Some of the teams have major changes to make. Some of these teams are going to be just hoping to develop a little bit further and run it back. But before we start any of that talk, Nick Durst, how you doing?
Michael, I'm doing well because right now my Super Bowl prediction for the two teams is looking fantastic, on the money, and we got some good games this weekend. I even thought the blowouts were entertaining. Obviously, you didn't think so because you're a Patriots fan, but as far as blowouts are concerned, like the Bucs beating the Eagles, still an entertaining game, even though it was not even close since the first quarter. Patriots, I guess we could start with them because that was a debacle. The Bills, a perfect game, 5 touchdowns and 5 offensive possessions, only 4 incompletions for Josh Allen. So, man, I am so pumped up for Bills Chiefs next week. I cannot wait for that game. I think I'll give you my predictions on the weekend, but it's going to be a fun one. But man, you picked your Patriots to win. I think Mac Jones was exposed. So, hopefully it grows from this, but a rough playoff debut, but the only rookie quarterback in the playoffs. So overall, you got to be happy with him this season.
Yeah, and I knew whenever I picked the Patriots that it was a little bit of a homerism more so than just objectivity. Whenever I looked at it, I kind of expected that the Bills would probably win, but I was hoping that the Patriots in a crazy weather game, super cold, super ground and pound, would be able to win it. But the Bills didn't ground and pound at all. They just completely pounded this team. It was bad. The Bills are very good. They look very good, and that's huge for them because a lot of times they get to playoffs and the physicality aspect of it kind of washes them out, and it makes it to where they don't end up reaching their goals. And obviously, they still have more games to win, but huge first step, especially against a very good Patriots defense, making them look completely abysmal. Judging both these teams, for the Bills, I think the important thing is just trying to refocus. You did dominate a very good team, but at the same time, things open up, and this offense that you face next week is going to be a lot more difficult to go against. So you got to refocus, recharge, and really kind of get into this mindset like, hey, we still got a lot left to prove. For the Patriots, the big question mark is what's going to happen on the defense side of the ball with so many veterans potentially retiring or leaving in free agency. J.C. Jackson's the big one. He is probably one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, going to need a major payday. The Patriots can pay him, but the overall flexibility with their cap space will result in some issues. There's rumors about Devin McCourty and Donta Hightower retiring, guys like Jamie Collins and Jawan Bentley that could be hitting free agency. There's a lot of question marks surrounding this Patriots team for the future. They still need a second cornerback as well, too, if J.C. Jackson does hit the market and just leaves altogether. Nick, for this Patriots team, what do you think the approach is to kind of keeping this defense intact and improving it for next year?
They got to try to bring as many guys back as possible and then also add to it, I think, because they're really good all season for the most part. You got to try to bring back Van Noy, McCourty. Big improvement from last year where you saw a lot of guys opted out and they were just disasters. So I think it's going to be try to bring as many guys as you can back and then also add to that instead of, adding to it by replacing people. I think that'd be more challenging.
Absolutely. And I think still there's a need at cornerback too, where if they have an option at an Ahmad Gardner, Andrew Booth, someone like that in the draft, then I think it's absolutely worth it to spend your first round pick because this team is a very man-heavy type system. And while J.C. Jackson has done a job, you got Joejuan Williams playing a lot of outside corner, and this is a guy that was drafted to be a tight end eliminator, didn't really work in that role, so now he's just a depth cornerback. He's supposed to be his own guy. Like, if you told me Joejuan Williams finds success outside of the Patriots, I wouldn't be surprised because he's an awful scheme fit. I think he's got talent, but I don't think he's a scheme fit for what the Patriots are trying to do. send him to a team like Philadelphia or to the Colts, and I think they would, find some real success with him. Now, for the rest of this unit, linebackers is kind of the big question mark because you assume they'll probably try to bring back one of Jamie Collins, Joanne Bentley, or Dante Hightower. I would probably assume it's Bentley just because of the youth, but ultimately it's a big need because they're kind of a team that's always been big on trying to make these run stuffing, highly intelligent, shallow zone linebackers really work. And while it's maybe not the most desirable position in terms of just absolute value of need, you do need guys that are going to be high IQ so you can really kind of put pressure up the middle, get reliable tackling, and so that your front seven is strong enough to really kind of make up for the lack of coverage support that you have in the secondary, and that's where these linebackers come into play. I'd like to see Collins back. I'd like to see Hightower back. I'd like to see Bentley back. But most likely, with the money being as tight as it is, at least one of them is going to be gone, probably two, and that's going to leave a big hole at the position. They'll need to find it. They may try to get Raekwon McMillan to fill that role, but he hasn't really proven himself all career. They're probably going to have to go young, and we'll see how it works out for them.
Do you think the Patriots need to get a big-time receiver?
I think so. I think I'm pretty sure I even reiterated this at the beginning of the season, but it felt like with all these signings on the offense, it was great. Like, I understand the idea behind it because you wanted to get these weapons surrounding your young QB. But at the same time, the Patriots were never going to be a team that passed enough to make all those contracts worth it. So paying Nelson Aguilar like $15 million, paying record-setting deals for Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, and then paying Kendrick Bourne, that's four weapons when you're a team that's going to pass maybe 25 times a game, like tops. And I know they sometimes would pass for 30 or whatever, but it was mainly, quick passing, very heavy in the run. And so when you're investing in four passing weapons, it wasn't going to work out regardless. But I do think that as this offense expands, they need to find a way to kind of hit on the number one receiver spot. And that's going to be a tough challenge. You can't go out and pay Devontae Adams $18 million because you don't really have it in your budget. So you're kind of looking to the draft. Now, if someone like Garrett Wilson is there for the Patriots pick, I think you kind of take him and say, okay, look, maybe other needs are bigger, but Garrett Wilson is a talent that is absolutely going to fill in for this team. He fits what we like to do at the receiver spot, and he'd be a huge addition. The big question mark, though, is, the guys that are probably more reasonable are guys like Jamison Williams or John Mechie, who are probably both going to be out for their entire rookie season due to torn ACLs late in the year, but could be huge payoffs if they're willing to sit on their pick for a year because the talent is absolutely there.
I'm curious. All right, they're not going to afford him, I guess, but he's been linked to him for so many years. Maybe they try to work something out with Beckham Jr. Seems like every time he's available, you hear, oh, Belichick wants him. I think you do great things with him. I just don't know if that is going to work with them with the cap.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It depends on what the market is for Odell Beckham Jr. because maybe if he's someone that's willing to take like a 2-year, $16 million type deal, get $8 million a year, that could possibly work. But at the same time, I feel like Odell's going to get a little bit more than that because I think some team is going to be willing to risk it, even if it's a 1-year, $12 million deal or something like that, where they're paying a little bit more, but it's a short-term risk. I think we'll see him get that kind of deal to where he has the opportunity to really kind of remake his brand. I think he's going to be someone that is probably smart about it. I think he's someone that is going to say, look, I need to be with a good quarterback because what I saw with Baker Mayfield, even though, you may argue Baker's good, his connection wasn't there, and it cost Odell Beckham Jr., and maybe that's on Beckham Jr., maybe that's on Mayfield. It's really up for debate, but ultimately for Beckham, he has to find someone that he is confident in with his connection. And with that, I think it's going to lead to him maybe following Rodgers wherever he lands or potentially re-upping.
I'm surprised.
With the Rams.
I'm surprised he didn't like I said before, I was surprised he didn't sign the Packers for this year. You put him and Adams. Come on now. That's kind of difficult to stop. But right now he's the guy in his mind, at least in LA. Robert was went out, so kind of worked out big time. Cooper Kupp, he's the guy though. Historic season. So Yeah, I think he's gonna, he wants to sign out with a good quarterback. So let's not rule out the Bucks. But there's a reason why he signed with the Rams. So maybe he likes LA and he gets comfortable there, and they bring him back.
Yeah, and maybe he stays in LA but goes to the Chargers, works with Herbert. That could be fun.
Big
Odell
time.
Beckham Jr. and Keenan Allen could be a pretty interesting duo.
Maybe he comes home to New Jersey for the Giants with Russell Wilson.
Could be, you never know.
You saw today reports that Russell Wilson wants to explore his options. So, what does that mean? I think the Seahawks are done, Michael, and I'm curious what his options are as comparison to the Seahawks options with the no trade clauses. I'm guessing you want to assume Wilson would want to go to Denver to give him the best chance to win, but very tough division to win in the AFC West.
Absolutely. Yeah. Denver, maybe like a Washington football team type deal. There's a few teams out there that are probably QB away. I think Pittsburgh is one that, I kind of talked about it for this playoff preview. I think outside of Big Ben, there's a lot of good talent on this roster. And while, yes, there's other positions of need, they need some offensive line help, they need some cornerback help. I think with a player like Russell Wilson or a player like Aaron Rodgers, then they are absolutely one of the biggest contenders in the NFL. And I think it's easier than a lot of people make it seem to patch up a roster. And I think they can do that pretty easily with the addition of a star quarterback like Rodgers or Wilson.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be curious to see where they go, but we'll be talking about that all off season. All right, so let's talk about the Raiders-Bengals game. At times watching this game, I'm thinking, wow, the Bengals are going to the Super Bowl. I was like, wow, they're so impressive. But ultimately, it was a close game like we thought it was going to be. A lot of controversy over the blown whistle when Burrow was going out of bounds. Nevertheless, the Bengals win, and now they're headed to Tennessee. Hopefully, Rich Bisaccia gets the head coaching job for next season, at least with the Raiders, who did a good job. Your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, obviously, just because of technicalities, that rule makes it to where the whistle should have had the ball play or blown dead. Ultimately, I don't think it had a ton of impact on the play itself, but I think you just kind of have to follow rules when it comes to that. But for the Bengals, Joe Burrow is extremely impressive. Jamar Chase is already one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. T. Higgins struggled this game, and still, this offense was able to get going for the entirety of it. I think the Bengals are a team that next year they're probably going to be one of the favorites to be a Super Bowl pick. And I think I'm kind of on that wagon as well. I think with another offseason of adding some talent to this roster, this is going to be a team that contends. For the Raiders themselves, you run it back. I mean, you don't entirely run it back. You don't have the exact same lineup, but you add a wide receiver to kind of hopefully open up this offense a little bit. I think DJ Chark out of Jacksonville would be a nice pickup. Maybe if Davante Adams is willing to sign, I think the big thing is if Green Bay will tag him or not. But if Davante Adams hits the market, you have a huge advantage there with the Davante Adams, Derek Carr, Fresno State connection, and that opens up this offense entirely. But you keep Derek Carr, you keep Bisaccia, you continue to invest in your defense, you try to add pieces to your secondary, you try to add some wide receivers, you try to get a right tackle that's kind of the long-term fixture, since it seems like Leatherwood is going to be a guy on the inside going forward. And I think this team is a team that very easily could be back here next year. I think while maybe they aren't a team I look at as a contender for the AFC West, I still think they're very much competitive and in the mix to be in the playoffs. Denver's obviously going to be good, especially if they get a quarterback. Los Angeles is going to continue to improve every year. They're probably going to continue adding to their defensive line, to their offensive line, and to their wide receiver unit. But, man, I mean, the Raiders dealt with more than anyone this year, and they were able to overcome it all to make it to the playoffs. So there's no reason to think, hey, we aren't going to be back here next year. Absolutely not. You should continue to build this roster, continue to contend with this AFC West that is, one of the strongest divisions, if not the strongest in the NFL. And, if you do it right, you're definitely back here next year, and you're potentially even looking at a team that could compete for a Lombardi rather than just a playoff spot.
Yeah, and Derek Carr had a good game for the most part. So remember like 2 years ago, a lot of controversy. Oh, is Carr going to be the guy for the Raiders? Definitely is.
Absolutely. I think he's extremely underrated when it comes to how he works as a quarterback. I think a lot of people are looking for these QBs that are just going to be, just complete game changers. And I don't think Carr is like a game manager or anything, but I think because he's not the top of the top in terms of just dominance in his play, people are already willing to just be like, oh, he's done. Derek Carr has overachieved with a lackluster roster for many years for the Raiders. And I think he was finally kind of getting it going with Henry Ruggs being in this offense, and it really kind of opened up the entire team. And then Ruggs, obviously got arrested due to the DUI. But now, if they can go add a weapon, whether it's a top threat in this draft with like a Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave or Traylon Burks or a Drake London, or if you can go in free agency and add someone like a Devontae Adams or DJ Chark, who I really think is underrated and would be great in Las Vegas, then I think that there is a lot of potential for this Raiders team and for Derek Carr to kind of take those next steps that people are quick to dismiss them on.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. No doubt about that. All right, sticking with the AFC, we already talked about the Bills and Patriots. So the Chiefs and Steelers, Big Ben's last game. So we think got off to quite a start with TJ Watt getting that defensive touchdown. But from there, it was all Chiefs, and the Chiefs advance, and they'll be hosting the Bills next week. Michael, you kind of you're very high on the Steelers. I think if they get a QB, they're going to be able to make a big run next year. What do you think about this Chiefs team right now?
I think the Chiefs look good. I think, we're kind of seeing the offense open up again, and I think that's huge. I don't necessarily believe that this is an offense that's necessarily going to be what this offense looks like next year. I think they should add another running back in the draft because I don't trust Edwards-Helaire to be the full-time guy there. And I think they should look for a receiver early if the talent's there. But ultimately, with Byron Pringle, Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Darrell Williams, Jerick McKinnon, they're getting it done. Mahomes is still Mahomes. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, they're still elite. So the offense is still going to be hard to slow down. And, this Pittsburgh defense had its struggles this year. They had their moments where they got completely annihilated, and they had their moments where they looked dominant. But if you're able to dominate this defense, then it proves you're a very good offense. And the Chiefs just made it look easy. And ultimately, that's the end of the Big Ben era for the Steelers. But I think there's still a lot of solid bright spots. I think the wide receiver unit, especially with all the money that they have to bring back Juju, is definitely going to be intriguing. Najee Harris looks very good. I think the defense has a lot of potential, especially with guys like TJ Watt. Devin Bush is still kind of a question mark because he's kind of hit or miss, very inconsistent. But if you're able to really continue growing this team, I think the sky's the limit if they are able to bring in the proper talent at QB. And I don't think that you can waste that on waiting a few years for the rookie QB to develop, like Matt Corral or Kenny Pickett or Sam Howell. If they were to go into the draft, though, then I'd say Willis, Howell, or Corral are the three that I'd say maybe could get it accomplished within a reasonable window for them to keep most of this roster in place.
I like Kenny Pickett for the Pittsburgh connections. So I think if anything, I think they might draft him. But if they don't sign somebody, they're definitely going to draft somebody because I don't think they're going to be going too long term. I don't think they're going to start the season with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, and I really don't think Dwayne Haskins is going to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a team that if they miss out on the big fish, we'll probably still see them bring in someone, maybe like a Teddy Bridgewater, maybe like a Jimmy Garoppolo.
Sam Darnold, Cam Newton.
Potentially Sam Darnold, but there's a lot of options out there, maybe like an Andy Dalton. There's pieces that people will be able to kind of bring in and be confident in to right the ship until that rookie QB is ready. And as long as the offense, continues to add protection, I think whoever's at QB should have one of the better support systems in the NFL.
What I will say is, if Trubisky and Mariota aren't starting in the NFL next year, then something's wrong here with talent evaluation, because they, based on everything I'm looking at, are more than good enough to play in this league. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, how many times are you going to get the Sam Darnolds of the world and Fitzpatrick get the chance? Give some younger guys an upside. All right, let's move on to the Eagles and Bucks game. As we expected, the Bucks take care of business. Evans, unbelievable. Gronkowski, unbelievable. And the Bucks looked fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you're kind of expecting from Tampa Bay when it comes to playoff time. But with all the injuries, there are still question marks about whether it would be accomplished. Philadelphia isn't the hardest challenge. I think a lot of people expected the Bucks to kind of control this game. But at the same time, the Bucks look clean. They looked very good, especially with Fournette out and with how big a piece he's going to be of their playoff run. There's just a lot of confidence now back on this Tampa Bay team to potentially get it done and get back to the Super Bowl, potentially win it again. I think right now I'm still sticking with Tampa Bay. They looked really good. I really like what Brady was doing in the passing game. They weren't really getting slowed down very often, whether it was quick passes to Gronk or deep shots to Mike Evans. They were making it work, and I think as this team gets healthy, Fournette back into the mix, I think there's going to be a lot of just ground and pound aggressive play, and I think the Bucs do that better than anyone.
Yeah, and when you see them play like that, you're like, how is anybody going to beat them? But we'll see what happens. Obviously, we both were in agreement the NFC Championship game will be them and the Packers, two very high-powered offenses. But my big takeaway really is that the NFL, maybe they should have gone to 7 playoff teams, because the 7th seeds are just so bad in comparison to the others, and they really can't compete as we saw this weekend.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And also with this graphic, 49ers are supposed to be up there for the Packers. That's who they will play next week, regardless of who wins tonight. But the winner of Rams Cardinals will play the Bucs. So apologies for that. But yeah, I think the 7 seed type deal, it's good to see more teams get a chance, especially with situations like the NFC West where, some of these teams are competing with a crazy schedule just to get in. But at the same time, some of these situations, Steelers didn't look like a playoff team for a lot of this year, and neither did the Eagles. And for that reason, it definitely calls into question whether or not there should be 7 spots in this playoff field. I think it makes sense in some regard, especially just to reward the top seed as the only one that gets by. But at the same time, for competitive sake, I think right now there's still a little bit of a separation between the top 6 and number 7.
No doubt about it. Okay, so the last game that actually happened, the 49ers and the Cowboys. I expected the 49ers to win. Everyone's going to talk about the bonehead move by Prescott to run at the end of the game. But even if they, got that snap off, which they did, but they spiked it in time, you got one play to score a touchdown. Very unlikely. And now the Cowboys and their fans, they're just going to chalk up this loss to the referees, but the referee did nothing wrong. Prescott should have gotten up, handed the ball to the referee, and that's the only way that he could have guaranteed that. But pretty bizarre ending there to that game.
Yeah, I don't think the Cowboys win this one, but I still think that the ref has to take a little bit of blame there, just because, I get that you're supposed to get the ball to the referee, but at the same time, the big issue I have isn't that he didn't get the ball. It's more that when he was running to the ball, he just completely trucked through Dak in the center, and both of them had to reset, and it wasted 2 seconds of clock. So, ultimately, 49ers probably still pull this game out. They probably win it. A lot of the issues weren't because, they just got robbed at the last second. It was because the offense looked stagnant. It couldn't get going despite having all the talent that it does. The defense was having issues stopping the run. Deebo Samuel was doing anything he wanted with this defense. There is a lot of question marks surrounding the Cowboys going forward. And, Jerry Jones came out and said that Mike McCarthy is going to be the coach next year, but I'm pretty sure both of us, when he was hired, said we didn't like the hire at all. And now, I mean, yeah, the Cowboys are in playoffs, but they're winning against one of the easiest divisions. They kind of look bad anytime they go against a real competitive team. And, now they're getting into playoffs and they're just a consistent early exit. So my question for you, Nick, is are the Cowboys making a mistake sticking with Mike McCarthy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look where this team was before he came. They were not good. They were perpetually just over 500, and maybe some years they made the playoffs, some years they didn't. They had a few good years there, Elliott and Prescott at first, but they weren't winning playoff games. So history would tell me that the Cowboys don't fire any coaches if they've coached. They have to coach at least 6-7 seasons. So unless they're so scared of losing Kellen Moore that they want to make him the head coach, I don't see any way that McCarthy gets fired, Michael.
Yeah, I think it's something that needs to happen. But I still think that regardless of who's head coach, there's still a lot of issues to fix. So it wouldn't be a quick fix in my mind. I think there's a lot of talent on this roster, but I think there is just some issues in terms of what this team's identity truly is. Dak Prescott needs to be a little bit better in terms of being an aggressive passer. I think there's a lot of times where he's just fine, but he really disappointed me this year. And I hope that, he kind of bounces back pretty well with, being fully healthy from the injury or whatever. But there were too many times this season where I felt like he disappointed me as a passer, and it just resulted in a lot of the Cowboys' season being disappointing. Now, I know that they made playoffs. They won their division. They're still had a pretty good record, but I don't know. I think there's a lot to be accomplished here for Dallas, and right now McCarthy's not doing it.
Interesting. So the other thing I really want to ask about before we wrap here, we'll talk about tonight's game real quick, is Jalen Hurts. Is he the guy, or are the Eagles going to look to get another quarterback?
I don't know if Jalen Hurts is the guy, and I think it's okay to kind of say I don't know in that regard, but I think he's the guy for next year because this is an opportunity for the Eagles to really kind of just stack their roster. I think they're going to trade one of their first-round picks, but right now they have 3 first-round picks. They can add very good defensive players in this class. They can improve their roster, improve their depth around the entire, just team. And you trade away one of the first-round picks, whatever, you probably get like a third and a first or something. I think that's what you do, and then you address it next year. If Hurts makes his strides, then you have your QB of the future. If he continues to kind of struggle as a passer, have his issues, then ultimately you're looking for someone like a Bryce Young or whoever rises up in that class to potentially be your quarterback of the future. But right now, with the way that they have acquired capital, it makes sense for them to, just fill out this team and see what the benefits are of just getting this great surrounding cast. And then if you need to go QB later, I think that's fine. But I think right now there's a great opportunity to really build up the rest of your roster. And I think that's more important right now than QB.
All right. So from one team who has some QB uncertainty to the team that thought they were certifying their quarterback, and that would be the Rams, Matthew Stafford. All the pressure is on Matthew Stafford tonight as he takes on the Arizona Cardinals.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you something when it comes to this game. If the Rams come out and they control this game, right? Like they look very good, similar to how the Bucs kind of controlled the game against the Eagles or how the Chiefs controlled the game against the Steelers. Does it change your opinion on the Rams, or do you still kind of hold the belief of there was too many inconsistencies throughout the course of the year? I'm not buying it yet until I see it on a consistent basis.
Yeah, there's nothing coming out of this game that would make me think that the Rams are going to go, next week and win against the Bucs. The Bucs very good, knowing last year, remember, they lost twice to the Saints in the regular season. They beat them in the playoffs. It's hard to beat the Bucs multiple times in a year. They'd have to be really convincing tonight. Again, I picked against them, so I think the Cardinals are going to win. Going into, I think, December 12th or so, Matthew Stafford was 10-70 against teams over 500. Never wins the playoff games, so I don't know. I think there's just a lot of pressure on him, a lot of pressure on McVay. Jared Goff won the wild card round for his team last year with a broken hand. So it's going to be a tricky situation, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be an interesting game, though, nonetheless. Kyler Murray, absolutely electric QB. Stafford just really gets it done. He's had his issues, but I think he's still an exciting quarterback. Obviously, Cooper Kupp, dominant player. I think the big question mark is what's going to happen on the run game, because James Conner has been very good as a goal line back all season, but there's still some question marks about how that run game gets going with the injuries in the passing game for the Cardinals. And then for the Rams, Cam Akers is back, but how much involvement is he really going to get? Because he's still coming off of an Achilles injury. I think there's still a lot of health issues and concerns for him. Sony Michel, very good running back for the Rams so far. But, I think whoever can win on the ground and help out the passing game most is going to kind of win this game. And I think that's why I lean for the Rams, because I think Sony Michel has done it on the ground all season. And I think with the ground game working, with the run game really kind of opening things up, we're going to see Stafford really able to take advantage of this Cardinal secondary and be able to create big moments. But, J.J. Watt active for this game, so
huge.
Could be a game changer.
That's a huge boost to his team's morale. Maybe he doesn't have a great game. I think he's definitely going to have an early sack or something that's going to fire up his squad. But, can guarantee you in the pregame huddle on the field, who's going to be speaking? It's going to be J.J. Watt. He's going to be firing his guys up.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for this game, and I think it's going to be one that should be super entertaining the entire way through. I think we could use one. Raiders and Bengals was good. Cowboys and 49ers was good. But the other games, maybe a little disappointing in terms of just how competitive it was. So I'm hoping that we at least get a 50-50 split on how the games break. And regardless of who wins, I do hope that it's a exciting matchup.
Do you think Kyler Murray can have a Josh Allen-like game where he's passing for 200 yards, rushing for over 50?
I think he could, but I don't know if he will. He's really kind of limited his scrambling this season and tried to stay back more as a passer. And I understand it, especially from a durability standpoint. But, maybe for the playoffs, he kind of opens it up a little bit, works more runs into the game, because I think that's when the Cardinals are at their best, especially right now with all the injuries in the wide receiver unit. Maybe opening it up with some scrambling by Kyler Murray would be huge for this Cardinals offense.
Yeah, I think he's a great weapon. No Hopkins, which sucks. So if you're not attempting to at least do some run pass option with Murray, that's a big mistake. So interested to see how that works out tonight.
Absolutely. Well, that is all we have for you here on Destination Draft Day. We want to thank everyone who was able to tune in today, and thank LandryFootball.com. For Nick Durst and myself, Michael Rochman, we will see you guys on Friday to discuss the Rams and Cardinals game and also preview the upcoming divisional round. We're looking forward to it, and we'll also start getting these mock off seasons going soon. So, leave all comments and requests in the comment section. We'll try to get to it as much as possible. We appreciate you guys. Have a great week and take care.